We begin with news about the plane crash that happened early this morning in Nepal. 18 people on board died after the plane crashed, but the pilot survived and is receiving treatment in hospital. The Saraya Airlines flight was carrying 17 company employees, including technical staff as well as 2 crew members. It was bound for the Himalayan tourism hub of Pokhara in the country's west. The country's aviation industry has been concerning to many countries. It is said to have a poor safety record attributed to multiple factors over the years.
Police on standby when the small plane caught fire after skidding off the runway while taking off from Nepal's capital, Kathmandu. Rescuers mobilizing themselves, getting on vehicles, heading to the crash site. According to a statement by the Nepal Civil Aviation Authority's Search and Rescue Coordination Center, the incident happened around 11:15 a.m. local time, a few minutes after the plane took off from the Tribhuvan International Airport. The crash site is horrific, with charred wreckage of the airplane. Rescue workers making their way through the wreckage with large parts of the plane completely blackened and charred. 19 people were said to have been on the Saraya Airlines test flight. Unfortunately, 18 of them, mostly technical staff, lost their lives. An ironic disaster as the aircraft was carrying the technicians to Pokhara city for maintenance checks. The sole survivor is the pilot. Nepali police released photographs showing his rescue with blood on his face, but his eyes still open. He's said to be receiving treatment in hospital. Local Saraya Airlines operates domestic flights within Nepal with 2 Bombardier CRJ-200 regional jets, both around 20 years old, according to Flight Radar 24. The country has been criticized for its poor air safety record, with the deadliest incident occurring in 1992 and the most recent in January 2023.
Let's turn to developments now ahead of the U.S. presidential election. Vice President Kamala Harris, fresh on the campaign trail, lashed out on her Republican rival, Donald Trump, to a crowd in Wisconsin. Ms. Harris likened her Republican opponent to fraudsters she said she had prosecuted. She enters the campaign with an increase in campaign funding amounting to $100 million. A new national poll on Reuters shows she has a 2-point lead ahead of Donald Trump, she gaining 44% against Donald Trump's 42%.
And it is my great honor to have Joe Biden's endorsement in this race. Wisconsin, I am told as of this morning that we have earned the support of enough delegates to secure the Democratic nomination. And I am so very honored, and I pledge to you I will spend the coming weeks continuing to unite our party so that we are ready to win in November. So, friends, we have 105 days until Election Day, and in that time, we've got some work to do. But we're not afraid of hard work. We like hard work, don't we? And we will win this election. Yes, we will. So as Leah told you, before I was elected vice president, before I was elected United States Senator, I was elected Attorney General of the state of California, and I was a courtroom prosecutor before then. And in those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say I know Donald Trump's type.
Supporters of the vice president who attended the rally in Wisconsin on Tuesday heaped praises on Harris, and all of them talked about how exciting it was to have her on the Democratic Party's ticket.
When she came up, it was great to hear of all the jobs she's done from the beginning and how capable she would be as president because of all of the experience that she's had in the legal system and everything else she's done.
What excites me to the Harris campaign has been her presence in the administration, Biden's administration, and her independence to have a voice for working families, especially women. It's very important. We have a lot of women in the Teamsters, and she speaks very loud and very clearly for rights of women, and that's very important in today's society.
My hope is that she can unite our country. And my second thing is if there's somebody that I want out in front of the whole entire world representing our entire country and who we are as a nation, I can't imagine of somebody who wouldn't do a better job.
Meanwhile, President Joe Biden has returned to Washington after isolating in his home state of Delaware. The president said he feels well in his first public appearance since ending his campaign. His arrival comes 2 days after ending his re-election bid and endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris for the Democratic nomination to take on Republican former President Donald Trump. He spent nearly a week recovering from COVID at his home in Wilmington as he weighed his 2024 candidacy, ultimately dropping from the campaign. President Biden announced in a statement he will be addressing the nation about his decision not to seek another term in office in the Oval Office later tonight. To other developments in U.S. politics, Senator Bob Menendez has submitted his resignation in the aftermath of his conviction on corruption charges effective August 20, 2024. Mr. Menendez was facing pressure from fellow Democrats to give up the job after being found guilty on 16 criminal counts that included bribery, obstruction of justice, and wire fraud earlier this month. The trial centered on what federal prosecutors called several overlapping bribery schemes in which the senator and his wife accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash, gold bars, and car and mortgage payments from 3 businessmen. In exchange, Menendez, a fixture in Washington for more than 3 decades, helped steer billions of dollars in American aid to Egypt and tried to influence the criminal prosecutions of 2 of the businessmen. He says he plans to appeal even as his sentencing is set for October 29th, just a week before the November 5 presidential election. Until a new appointment is made to replace him, his resignation will temporarily reduce the Democratic majority in the Senate to 50 to 49.
On Friday, the Southern District of New York brought charges against me. I understand how deeply concerning this can be. However, the allegations leveled against me are just that, allegations. For anyone who has known me throughout my 50 years of public service, they know I have always fought for what is right. My advocacy has always been grounded in what I learned from growing up as a son of Cuban refugees, especially my mom, my hero, Evangelina Menendez. Everything I've accomplished, I've worked for, despite the naysayers and everyone who has underestimated me. I recognize this will be the biggest fight yet, but as I have stated throughout this whole process, I firmly believe that when all the facts are presented, not only will I be exonerated, but I still will be the New Jersey's senior senator. For now, I want to address 4 things. First, a cornerstone of the foundation of American democracy and our justice system is the principle that all people are presumed innocent until proven guilty. All people. I ask for nothing more and deserve nothing less. The court of public opinion is no substitute for our revered justice system. We cannot set aside the presumption of innocence for political expediency when the harm is irrevocable. To those who have rushed to judgment, you have done so based on a limited set of facts framed by the prosecution to be as salacious as possible. Remember, prosecutors get it wrong sometimes. Sadly, I know that. Instead of waiting for all the facts to be presented, others have rushed to judgment because they see a political opportunity for themselves or those around them. All I humbly ask for in this moment, in my colleagues in Congress, the elected leaders, and the advocates of New Jersey that I have worked with for years, as well as each person who calls New Jersey home, is to pause and allow for all the facts to be presented.
Meanwhile, Russia's other ally in Asia, North Korea, has sent more balloons carrying rubbish into neighboring South Korea, marking the North's 10th launch since the month of May this year. White balloons from North Korea, suspected to be carrying an assortment of trash, flew across the heavily fortified border of South Korea's military loudspeakers as they were broadcasting messages targeting the North. South Korean residents living near the border expressed worry about the balloons triggering tensions on the peninsula. As South Korea's military confirmed the North had sent another batch of trash-laden balloons earlier today. Some of them have landed near South Korea's presidential office, and trash carried by the balloons was identified in the area around the government complex in the Yongsan area. The Presidential Security Service said in a statement the objects in the balloons contained no contaminants or other risks. Meanwhile, Belarusian Foreign Minister Maxim Vladimirovich has arrived in Pyongyang at the invitation of the Korean Foreign Ministry. A video provided by North Korea's official news agency KCNA showed the foreign minister being greeted by North Korea's Vice Foreign Minister, Kim Jong-gyu at the airport. KCNA had previously said the visit would be from Tuesday up until Friday. Checking now on the weather in the Asian Pacific region. Typhoon Gemi has reportedly made landfall on Taiwan's east coast, bringing gusts of around 240 kilometers per hour. Gemi, which has landed near the city of Hualien, is expected to be the most powerful storm to hit the island in 8 years. Taiwanese officials said 2 people have been killed, hundreds more injured. The island's largest annual military drills have been cancelled, along with almost all domestic flights and more than 200 international flights. Authorities have also evacuated more than 2,100 people living in precarious conditions in 3 northern regions. Meanwhile, rescuers waded through chest-deep water to bring residents to safety as floods and landslides triggered by heavy rains hit Vietnam's northern provinces. Footage from state broadcaster VTV showed buildings and roads in Son La City submerged in floods, while rescuers moved through inundated streets on boats searching for people. Roads have been cut off due to heavy water flowing down from mountaintops in rural areas. And in the Philippines, rescuers rushed to save trapped residents from their homes after torrential rains caused by an enhanced monsoon and Typhoon Gemi inundated several parts of Manila and nearby provinces. In the river city of Marikina in Metro Manila, emergency workers waded through waist-deep waters and used rubber dinghies to rescue residents from their homes. A storm which is strengthening as it gusts towards Taiwan, this was earlier, did not make landfall in the Philippines but intensified seasonal monsoon rains, causing landslides and flooding over the past few days. When we return after the break on The World Today, U.S. para-athlete Kenya Sessa sets a new Guinness World Record. Stay with us. Welcome back. Still watching The World Today on Channels Television. Bangladesh's Junior Minister of Information, Mohammed Arafat, has been taking stock of government buildings destroyed during recent protests in the country, one of them being the state-owned television station, Bangladesh Television, in Dhaka. The station was vandalized in the clashes between protesters and security forces, which left almost 150 people dead. Meanwhile, the capital today was a sharp contrast of what happened last week. Authorities have partially restored telecommunications services, although internet connection is slow and social media remains suspended. The country has mostly been calm since Sunday, when the Supreme Court scaled down reservations for various categories to 7%, overruling a High Court verdict reinstating a 56% quota in government jobs that had been scrapped in 2018. Restrictions will be relaxed for 7 hours today, and offices will also be open from just 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Authorities are still searching for survivors in the landslides that occurred in southern Ethiopia. Much of the work is being done by locals using shovels and their bare hands as they dig through the mud. So far, they've only retrieved 229 bodies. The landslides have been attributed to heavy rains that occurred on Sunday. They also occurred on Monday morning, burying those who gathered to help. There had been a third landslide on Tuesday. Gopher, where the landslides occurred, is part of the state known as southern Ethiopia, located about 320 kilometers southwest of the capital, Addis Ababa. The government has deployed a disaster response team to help with search and rescue efforts. Dozens of demonstrators have been arrested in Kampala, Uganda, after anti-corruption protests in defiance of an official ban. Approximately 60 people, including a prominent TV presenter and 3 young protest leaders, were hurriedly brought before courts and remanded in custody following a march on the country's parliament on Tuesday. Partly inspired by ongoing Kenyan protests, the march was organized on social media amid anger over long-standing allegations of corruption against many highly placed public officials. President Yoweri Museveni, who's ruled Uganda for almost 40 years, had warned the protesters before the event they were playing with fire.
This protest today was organized to address the issue of corruption that is rampant in this government today. So that's why the youth were mobilized to march to Parliament and show our dissatisfaction with the corruption.
We are one East Africa. Their blood is our blood. Their protests have given us the courage to come out and stand for our rights as well.
A landmark investigation in New Zealand has found some 200,000 children, young people and vulnerable adults suffered abuse while in state and faith-based care in the country over the last 70 years. It means almost 1 in 3 children in care from 1950 to 2019 suffered some form of abuse, including being subject to rape, electric shocks and forced labor, according to the Abuse in Care Royal Commission of Inquiry. The publication of the Commission's final report follows a 6-year investigation into the experiences of nearly 3,000 people. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon apologized for the findings, calling it a dark and sorrowful day in New Zealand's history as a society.
Today is about them, the survivors and their stories. And to the survivors, I want to say thank you for your exceptional strength, your incredible courage, and also your confronting honesty. I cannot take away your pain, but I can tell you this. Today you are heard and you are believed. The state was supposed to care for you, to protect you, but instead it subjected you to unimaginable physical, emotional, mental and sexual abuse. A number of faith-based schools, institutions and people in positions of authority who you should have been able to have trust failed you in the worst possible way. This is a dark and sorrowful day in New Zealand's history. And as a society and as a state, we should have done better, and I am determined that we will do so.
As a government, we are committed to delivering a response to the report with the respect and the dignity that it deserves. Over the next few months, Cabinet will consider the findings and the report's 138 recommendations and the 95 redress recommendations from the redress report, and we will make decisions and initial priorities. As recommended by the Royal Commission, we are prioritising decisions around redress for the survivors of abuse and care.
The Royal Commission of Inquiry into Abuse and Care report is of historical significance to New Zealand. It is the result of the largest and most complex public inquiry ever held on our shores. And because of this, the content needs to be considered with respect and with care. It cannot be rushed.
One of the victims of the violence in New Zealand, Mopulu Frances Tagaloa, says she was repeatedly abused from the age of 5 to 7 by a popular Catholic brother who taught at a school which neighbored the primary school she attended in Auckland. She did not remember the abuse until she was an adult and then started to suffer flashbacks. Tagaloa was one of more than 2,300 survivors who testified to a New Zealand inquiry or Royal Commission into Abuse in State and Church Care between 1950 and 2019. The more than 3,000-page report from the inquiry, which is one of the longest and most extensive in the country's history, was tabled before Parliament today.
Remember my abuse until I was an adult and started getting flashbacks. And that was very traumatic, like experiencing that trauma. So I had to work through that. It took a while, get counselling and all sorts. I think there's so many impacts of the abuse. I suffered from depression at different times. Just the trauma of the memories of abuse, they live with you just all the time, and you can get triggered by the simplest of things every day. So 20 years later, the commission comes around, and then I decide, well, this is what I need. I need to tell my story. I need them to know what my story was. So that's how I got involved. It was challenging being involved with the commission because having to tell the detail of your abuse is just re-traumatizing for any survivor. But I knew I needed to tell my story. I knew I needed to be able to let other people know what had happened, and I knew I was not the only one that was abused by this person. So if there were others out there, it would be important for them to know that. Coming to the Royal Commission, I knew, coming forward, I knew that that would be quite a challenging time for me, but also for my family. And so I had to tell them about the abuse, especially my 2 sons, and that was one of the hardest things I've ever done.
Well, this next story will make you smile and also make you wonder. U.S. para-athlete Kenya Cesar has set a Guinness World Record for the longest handstand on a skateboard. The 31-year-old, who was born with a congenital absence of both legs, held the position for 19.65 seconds, according to Guinness World Records, when it announced Cesar's feat. According to the website, LA3 refers to bilateral above-knee amputation. This video showing her doing handstands on her skateboard, Cesar later said that she had been skating since she was 9 years old. She was abandoned as an infant in Thailand and found by a passerby. She grew up in Portland, Oregon with her adoptive family and discovered her love for skateboarding at high school, where she participated in events such as the X Games and U-Tour, where she came second in women's street adaptive skateboarding in 2022.
How I achieved the handstands, actually, I was just been skating ever since I was like 9 years old. One day just like, hey, let me see if I can just like balance myself on a skateboard, but lift my body up, and I'm half a body anyway, and just like lift myself up, and I'm light. So I can just do it and just go with it and flow with the board. And I'm strong. So I have like, strong arms, and I just skate and handstand on a skateboard. I was like practicing all month, and I was like, I got this. I already know I got it because when you've done it most of your life anyways, and you have done it in many different videos, and that's like your signature trick or move, it just naturally comes to me. When I'm on a skateboard, I don't feel trapped. I feel free, and I live my life through my skateboard, because skateboarding and the skateboard is just part of me. It's like part of my legs. And I think that's so incredible that I can just have something to just move around, but also feel so good when I just skate. The wind is coming through my hair. I'm vibing it. There's so many different skateboards that I love, and it just feels like it's a part of me. It's part of my soul.
Indeed, anything is possible. Thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Amarachi Bani.